The other day in the office, I was like, oh, yeah, like, it's not like that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah. I hadn't read the article fully, and I thought it was just that she was supplying drink and being okay with shenanigans happening in her house. I didn't realize the level of it. So I'm like,
Oh yeah,
reining back my, like, this happens all the time in Ireland.
It's a bit darker than it seems.
Mhm.
Indeed. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff, and this is a special episode of our show. We're skipping the time machine and just discussing the Los Gatos Party Mom case.
There's no podcast to listen to, but we'll include some links in our notes for you.
We also have a very special guest with us, Jay McDonald, who you heard last time on episode 170 back in December, where we were talking about the Gainesville Ripper case. Jay, welcome back to the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I was a bit hesitant to invite Jay back on the show because the last time he was here, he fooled me with a story about an ex-girlfriend of his. So I wasn't sure how much trust I had in this guest, but I realized it was all coming from a good place. So I'm glad to have you back here on the show today, Jay.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, we didn't have time to plan something, or else there would have been
I don't
more
know.
shenanigans.
Like, how many of these
see.
articles are actually just BS? Who knows?
I'm not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before we get to our discussion, though, let's just, in case the Los Gatos Party Mom story is unfamiliar to you, let's just do a quick synopsis, and then we can start talking about it. So, again, if this story is new to you, let's kind of set the time and place. So, this all began back in the height of COVID, back in 2020 and 2021. Most kids were stuck at home, not going to school. There was a mom from Los Gatos, California, which is right near us. It's kind of near San Jose in the Bay Area. Her name is Shannon O'Connor, and she was hosting.
Very Irish, actually.
It's very Irish. She was hosting a bunch of parties at her home for teenagers.
So she provided them with a lot of alcohol and drugs. Some of the teenagers were as young as 14. Reminder for the Irish contingent, drinking age here, the legal drinking age is 21. But she didn't just host the parties and like look the other way. She allegedly forced the kids to drink, ran drinking games, and forced kids to perform sexual acts and recorded video of it all.
So she was charged with 63 felonies and misdemeanors. That trial started back in 2023. These charges included child endangerment, sexual battery, and furnishing alcohol to minors.
There were 20 victims listed in the case, in total 12 girls and 8 boys.
And then in early March of this year, 2026, Shannon O'Connor was found guilty on 58 of 63 charges. And she's facing up to 30 years in prison. We're recording this before the sentencing. By the time you hear this, her sentencing might have happened. We will put an update on that in the show notes. All right, Jay, you suggested we cover this story. I think the logical first question is, why?
Jeff, it's a great question. A lot of times when I'm listening, to the news, or I hear something, very odd, I often I wonder if there's a connection to Florida. And this case had my
context. Jay is from Florida. Just for the context, Jay is actually from
right.
Florida.
I didn't bring that up. Yes, I am from Florida. Though I have been living in the Bay Area for nearly 30 years, there's still, part of my reptilian brain that is, just wired into Florida news. And this story just kind of had my alarm bells going off. And I was like, I've heard this story before. And I was kind of shocked by some of the details and also the severity, of the potential sentencing. That this lady was facing, so much prison time. And I was thinking, I've heard this story before, and so I approached Jeff as a potential story for the podcast, because I think there was kind of a rich history this type of crime being committed in the country, here in California and also I think in Florida.
Yeah, well, and we should talk about some of those other similar stories. I think I feel like this is a story I'd heard of. Like I'd been sort of loosely following it just because it's a local Bay Area story, and it kind of popped in and out of the news over the last 5 or so years. This news just broke as the party mom was found guilty of those 58 charges. But had either one of you known this story before that?
No,
No,
I
not
hadn't
at
heard
all.
of it.
Mm-mm.
Because not enough people read the San Jose Mercury News. You need to read your local newspaper, people. That's where I heard about it. It's front page news.
So was this big news like in 2021, like during the pandemic? Was she found out then?
I don't remember exactly when. I mean, I think definitely when the charges were filed, which I think was 2023. I don't remember the first time I heard about it. I just remember because this is the type of thing, like you said, that there have been other stories like this of kind of like party houses or something similar with a bunch of underage kids just getting drunk and bad things happening. But I think this was bigger news just because it was, I mean, this is pretty extreme, right? Like this is, like Dee mentioned in our little intro, like she didn't just allow her like teenage children to have a party at her house and not intervene. She was orchestrating this. She was the one actually putting this together.
Sorry, side note on this, Jeff, you are living close-ish to where this went on, and you have kids like who would have been similar-ish age to the kids involved in this. So I'm just wondering if your kids had ever mentioned it to you, that they heard it through the grapevine. I do think the grapevine works very differently here than I'm used to back in Ireland, but like I'm wondering if they had ever mentioned anything to you about hearing about this story.
I don't think so. I think like I do have one of my kids who is an avid local newspaper reader, and so I think he was definitely aware of the story. But he is also the antithesis of a kid, I think, who would be at a place like this. So
I don't mean it from that point of view. I actually mean it from a, like, when wild stories happen back in Ireland, like it's very much, well, my mother would be like, do you know so-and-so's older brother was actually at, so-and-so's surname. But again, I think the grapevine is very different back in Dublin than it is even in the Bay Area itself.
It's interesting though, because there is another element here about, we're all parents as well. And just the idea of a parent doing this is so shocking. And I think that's also what kind of connected me to this story as well, because also I think the outrage has changed a little. And, kind of, I don't know if we want to dive into some of these other stories quite yet, but one of the first ones that I knew that I had heard of this happening in one of the original party mom stories. I mean, there's a trope, they're called party mom crimes. One of the first ones was this case of mid-2013 where she had parties. They raided her home and found 26 minors drinking. And then it was famous because while the kids were being arrested, she was hiding in a closet. And I guess this became national news, and she got dragged down to Dr. Phil. So that's the Florida connection. Question I have for that is maybe, there's so much outrage around these big events, but then also, is it okay, in small, to have a pint with your kid or not? I don't know.
I mean, I think that's like kind of where I'll come in and be like, it's very different having grown up in Ireland. The drinking age is 18. The culture is different. Like the way the police often view, like, a 16-year-old having a pint in a house, like very different to, and when I said to you both on Monday, sure, I've loads of stories of this. I hadn't read the full article and I just thought she was giving them a few drinks or allowing them to get up to whatever they wanted to in the house. So in terms of the Michelle Rogers case that you're bringing up, all I'm seeing here is like 26 minors are drinking in her house. So honestly, my question straight away is like, well, were they just drinking? Was she just turning a blind eye? And what's a minor in this? Like, is it a 19-year-old? Is it a 17-year-old? Or like, you know, that they would be my questions. But I think what was for me very, and as you said, Jay, like we're all parents, like was really shocking about the Shannon O'Connor case is like she's forcing them to drink and she's making them perform sexual acts on each other. I don't know if she was involved in it. And then videoing them. I'm like, hold on, Shannon, like what's your beef? Like what's your issue here? Like why aren't you out with your own mates having fun if that's what you're into? I don't, well, sorry, it was during COVID, but like still, there's something more here that I feel like we're not seeing. Well, and I will also say, and I'm sorry, Jeff, you've tried to interject 3 times and I'm not letting you. The other thing is like, she's a woman and I'm aware that it seems like she got, or sorry, we're awaiting her sentencing, but she faces up to 30 years in prison. If this was a man, I think it would have been not front page news of the Mercury. I think it would be front page news, like further afield.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things I was going to interrupt you and ask you. Yeah, how would this be different if this was, you know, a 50-year-old man and there are 12 young girls along with 8 young boys, and he's coercing them into this and plying them with alcohol and drugs and then taking it this much further. I feel like part of I feel like it's the same thing we say when we talk about like these stories with teachers where like there's such a gender divide here and it's I think it's treated so much differently. But I wanted to ask you too, one thing while we're talking about the difference with Ireland, a question, I guess, Dee, for you. So this Michelle Rogers story, 26 minors drinking. Is that a thing you would expect to see in Ireland? Or are you talking about just like having a pint with your kids? Like, I feel like those are 2 very different things.
There were definitely parents growing up. And again, we go back to the fact that the drinking age is 18, which is like the legal drinking age. Definitely when I was growing up, it's fine to have a drink. Drinking age in most families, I would say, is more like 16 or 17. Not all families. And then there's like another contingent who their parents are like, I'm going out on a Friday, whatever. Like, do whatever. Make sure the house is not a mess. And then I'll be home. Or I'd rather you be in here than in a field somewhere. So there was like a variation, but like, yeah, I knew of, like, I went to many parties when I was 16 or 17. They're not wild. Like, you're just having a few drinks, but you're indoors as opposed to cold outside. And then there's the additional element of when you're 16 or 17, you can also probably get into the local like nightclub or like bar. So like, and that's where I think the disparity between like the cultures is as well. And why my outrage for the alcohol isn't huge. So in like the Michelle Rogers case, I'm like, okay, was she just like letting them like drink somewhere warm? And like, if they're going to get up to something, like, was she just saying, well, here is like a bed as opposed to, you know, a field? Yeah. Like, that's very different to forcing someone to drink or encouraging someone to like perform sexual acts or forcing them if that's what happened here. And then also the recording them. Like, there's so many layers on this particular case that like takes it from a...
Yeah,
I think that's worse every time there's a sentence.
Jay, I was curious, so both your perspective as a Florida man, but also as a parent of you've been a parent of teenagers, similar ages to my kids, right? Like, they were same age as some of these kids involved in this case. Like, what's your perspective on like what Dee just said of like the, you know, rather you have these drinks at home versus out in a field somewhere?
Yeah, it's very interesting, you know, because I think that just culturally, you know, there's such a strict, especially in the Bay Area, just like such an adherence, to the rules, and it's pretty. Even though this is considered a pretty liberal place, like around like I don't know, social norms, it seems pretty rigid sometimes. And so just this idea of going over, like having a party at somebody's house, where there's like free flowing booze and parents and adults, when you're a kid, when you're like 16, 17, just doesn't happen. As far as I know, they're, the like parents have parties, usually, and then kids are just studying for their AP exams, and especially Gen Z kids, and they're or just going to the beach and having bonfires and doing their own thing, and so there wasn't that mixing. But when Dee was talking to me about that experience in Ireland, I also remembered growing up in the 80s in Florida, when that was a little more blurred, and when I was a teenager, there would be big parties with like adults, and they didn't care, they just pulled the pickup truck around the bonfire and would have kegs and whiskey and whatnot, and it seemed fine, but also a little weird. So I think even back then, like maybe there was like a difference, and maybe it's just culturally in America, even that's a kind of a carefree place, in rural Florida where kind of anything goes. But even back then, it would be a little weird, if there were a ton of parents around.
Why weird?
I think there was just like a separation, because like maybe parents, I don't know, kids want to be around kids and parents want to be around parents. And that's just the way I would think about it.
So weird to be like hanging out, partying with people, your parents and people's parents there. But I guess that's the difference between like having a drink and partying. Like those are two different things.
They are very different, yeah.
Right.
I feel like what makes this case so sort of like alarming is that it wasn't that these kids were self-organizing a party. It's that this woman was pulling this all together, right? Like she was seemingly pulling the strings. She was in their social media. Like she was the one orchestrating it all. And that's so much different than just like, buying a keg and heading out for the night. Like there's I feel like there's so many different like ways this can go that are maybe acceptable or acceptable-ish, depending on your perspective. And this is like, yeah, like Dee said, this is so many layers past that.
Yeah. And it is shocking. I know this is going to say a lot about me as a person, but it's shocking that she's like a mother. I don't know. It's an additional shock. And I know that that's like one of the other stories I know that Jay, that you researched to bring here was with the Too Pretty to Imprison.
Right, the teachers. Yeah.
Too Pretty, Deborah LaFave. So, that's the other like element here, I think, is, yeah, I don't know.
Wait, what is that case? Can you explain that one?
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't give any context. She was a 23-year-old reading teacher in Temple Terrace in Florida. And basically in 2004, she was arrested for having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old. But basically her attorney used a defense of she was too pretty for prison. So I think the quote is, putting her into prison would be like putting a piece of raw meat in with the lions.
Yeah, this
so
case,
she ended up getting like only 3 years of house arrest and 7 years of probation. Like she had like a sexual relation with a 14-year-old. This is similar, actually, Jeff. I sent you a podcast today. It's called The Lucky Boy, and it's about a case in England, where basically someone thought that they were like lucky, 14-year-old who ended up being involved with a teacher who was deemed, like the pretty teacher on the campus or whatever. And it was only when he got into his 30s that he realized what had actually happened and how wrong it was that this that this sexual abuse and sexual encounter had started. So it's really similar to this case. Now, she was actually only given in December 2023, she was basically banned from teaching. But from my understanding, she served no time in prison. And in the case of the Deborah I can't pronounce the surname, Lafave.
Sounds right.
Wow.
She got 3 years of house arrest and 7 years of probation.
And if it had been a 23-year-old male teacher having a relationship with a 14-year-old female student,
yeah,
probably wouldn't have been just house arrest.
No, it'd just been prison.
But even you'd question whether if she hadn't have been as attractive, like the fact that was the case.
Yeah, what's funny about this is, so I did some more digging into this case, and I remember this one. And it's interesting because Temple Terrace, Florida is a suburb of Tampa, very close to where I grew up. And I remember when this case came out, and Temple Terrace is, I think, in very kind of similar to Los Gatos, like, upscale, somewhat suburban, idyllic kind of life, near a university. So this is near USF, I think, which is University of South Florida, not University of San Francisco. Even though Tampa is not South Florida, it is right smack in the middle. Don't understand that.
I was gonna say Tampa is, yeah.
Yeah, but it's USF. But yeah, another shocking thing about this was she had been a pinup model, and so pictures leaked, during this case, and flooded the internet, and then that was also another kind of just facet of the case that she was a attractive lady, but it's interesting because what connected this to the original Los Gatos case, I think it's the power dynamic. How you were talking about that, Jeff, how wrong it is that the parent was actually orchestrating all this criminal behavior, but she had the power because she was the mom, she was the parent. And in a similar way, the teacher has all the power in the school. And so there's that big power dynamic. But then I think what makes it so interesting is you're totally right. If this would have been, a coach, a male coach, and some, a poor high school girl, and there would have been a relationship, he would have just gone to prison. Wouldn't even made the paper. Probably. It's just a crime. But then this is, I think it's so shocking, because you don't picture like a criminal, to look like this model. And then also like the power dynamic is also very weird.
She also, there's like a story, there's a biography that was produced about her, which was, it's called Gorgeous Disaster. Like, if you can just take yourself for a minute to be the victim or the victim's mother, say in this case, and know that a book is coming out called Gorgeous Disaster, the tragic story of Deborah Lafave.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but if that was a man, no frickin' way.
What?
And like the synopsis of it is basically, blah, blah, blah. This describes the investigation. Convicted for having sexual relations with one of her middle school students, describes the investigation, her childhood and psychological struggles and possible reasons why she did it. I'm like, is it like, do we call it sexual relations with one of her middle school students, or do we call it like how she abused one of her middle school students? Because like, this is like the words matter here, especially like, Gorgeous Disaster, her tragic story.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Fuck that for a shortcut. Sorry.
Couple things
That's the
on
tequila
that.
talking.
Couple things on that. One is I've lately been served up on Instagram a variety of kind of rewriting headlines of like rape headlines, where changing it from, woman walking alone, attacked and raped, to man attacks woman, and like how those are always written from like the woman is, it's her fault.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to say about that is a couple weeks ago, I was at a San Jose Sharks game, and it was Educator Appreciation Night, and they did a lot of wonderful things. They recognized teachers in the crowd. They had a teacher sing the national anthem. But at one point, they played Hot for Teacher, the Van Halen song, which I love. Great song.
I mean, it is a great song.
Great band.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I said to the person I was there with, like, this feels inappropriate. Like, this fetishizing of teachers. And, like, which, to your point of, like, okay, so this woman committed a crime. She committed rape. And now we're sort of fetishizing her because she's pretty.
Well, it's similar to, like, remember American Pie, and it was like Stifler's mom?
Yeah, Stifler's mom. Wow.
Like,
yeah.
that was like a
Reference.
whole thing. And she was the one who was like hosting the parties, and she was there trying to like seduce the young boys and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like just this like whole, I don't know. The world is fucked enough at the moment to be going down the path of how often the media puts women just in that light. And like the judicial system now, it does feel like it caught up. I know, Jay, sorry, I'm not going to speak to all of the research you brought because I brought none. I just brought my vibes of my tequila. But like, I know it's probably gotten stricter, but like, it's just this idea that if you're attractive and you're a female, you might get away with things. I'm like, you're still fucking these people up. Like, just because it's a boy, and just because like there's this whole attitude that like, well, good on you, lad. Sure, you know, that's a great thing for you having bagged the teacher, which is part of like the podcast I'm listening to at the moment. Like that narrative. He like the guy in the podcast I'm listening to, which is the lucky boy, he says like even now when he brings it up, his mates are like, what are you complaining about? Like, this was great. This was great for you. Like, your first time was with this like really hot like older woman. It's like, she was a fucking teacher. Like, he was 14. That's not okay.
I was going to ask, so I did remember a story I don't think I've told on the podcast before from my boarding school days, but Dee, you said you had did you have an Ireland story you wanted to share?
No, like, no, well, this is what I was saying. I was like, oh, sure, I have loads of stories to go to parties and houses, and parents knew and we didn't care. But it was nothing like this. Like, this is like a whole other like level.
So yeah, when I was at teaching at this boarding school, there was a student there who was in one of my classes who was very nice. Seemed like she was a good part of good student in the class, and it started spreading around that there was this story in Rolling Stone about her. And so she was at a house party, which was this mansion. I don't remember where it was. And there were no parents, there were no adults present, but it was a lot of kids, a lot of drinking. And a boy fell or was pushed, or I don't know exactly how it happened, but he hit his head on the concrete by the pool. And he was pretty messed up. And the kids basically didn't do anything. They didn't help him. They moved him, I think, to like a bedroom, and he died.
Man.
And no one was ever charged, I don't think, because it was unclear of like who was actually responsible. Basically, it was a bunch of drunk kids at a party, and no one would take responsibility, and no one was probably sober. But she ended up coming to this boarding school as a way of sort of getting out of that town and kind of getting away from it and starting fresh. I guess a question I have is, as parents, if this had been your kids at your house where this happened, your kids were hosting a party. I know your kids are a little young for that, but future planning.
Have you met my kids?
Mm-hmm.
Way ahead of the curve. Always planning parties.
Yeah, like how do you think you would respond if a boy died at a party?
Oh, geez, Jeff, that's like a really hard question to answer. Like, I think it's like worst case scenario, really, isn't it? I think the hardest thing there is probably like the parents. Where were they? And also, the other question is like, what about all the parents of the kids who were at the party? Where did they think their kids were?
But I mean,
It's
do you fault these
also-
kids for
Yeah,
being at a
I
party?
think
I mean,
you
they're
can-
they're high school kids. They just want to go to this party and drink. And have a good
No,
time.
sorry, I'm not faulting. I'm throwing out questions that I don't think it's necessarily just the person whose house it's in. I don't think it's like their fault.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just throwing out like kind of more like there's a lot more than her parents, or like a question of if that was like your house. I think like accidents, if this was in fact an accident, they happen more often when there's alcohol or drugs involved, but they do happen.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you can tell that story, but I think framing it almost like not to defend. I keep forgetting the party mom's name, the Los Gatos one. Is it
Shannon O'Connor.
Very Irish.
Yeah.
Think of the most Irish
Very
name you could
Irish.
think of, and then
Killian.
All right. Well, there's Bridget.
Saoirse.
Saoirse.
Yeah. But not to defend her, but it's almost like there are, when parents aren't there, bad stuff can happen. And also, I mean, I was at a party once where somebody died. I wasn't in high school. I was in college, but I was pretty young. I was probably 18 or 19. And I saw the guy, he was drinking moonshine, like from a jug. And it was a Halloween party. And they just found him the next morning, keeled over.
Like alcohol
And
poisoning?
it was, I don't think, yeah. And so it's, we definitely needed supervision back then, it was just one of these big rager parties. And I don't know if it was I don't even know whose house it was at. It was in Ocala. It could have been a parent's house that they were gone. But the people, they weren't high schoolers, they weren't like legitimate children, but I mean, they were, 19-year-olds, which are children.
Jay, can I ask you, to be clear, I was a nerd in high school.
What? Shocker.
But when I got to college, I feel like even though I went to a college that was a big drinking school, like that was pretty much the only social activity, most people were drinking, the drink of choice was Natty Light, which is pretty water adjacent, I would say.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Moonshine,
Is that
in my limited experience.
Beer?
Yes, I don't think it should count as beer. I have not tasted it in a long, long time. But moonshine is the other end of that spectrum. Are Florida parties just like a more hardcore party than like is? Because moonshine is like a whole nother level. Am I wrong about that? Like it's like that's dangerous.
No,
you go blind from moonshine.
Yeah, that was like a hardcore at a hardcore event, which was just a normal event. But Southern drinking, just in general, is like on a kind of whole other level, I think. Though I have heard places, other regions of the country, I think maybe it's just rural, areas, because sometimes places, way out in the boonies where there's literally nothing else to do.
Well, I guess
but yeah, moonshine parties are weird.
My question for you related, so I know we've talked about this before, but so in Ireland, there's like having a pint of Guinness or something kind of lighter, and then there's what's the potato?
Just like lean more in poaching. Lean more into the stereotypes, Jeff. Being like, oh yeah, I presume you're just sitting around drinking pints of Guinness and eating potatoes.
When you're a 16-year-old having a drink with your parents, what are you drinking?
No, sorry, you're not having a drink with your parents. Your parents are turning a blind eye to you having a drink in a field. I just sent you guys a message of Dutch Gold, and it's like perfectly packaged in a like 4 cans for €5 packet. Dutch Gold was like the like.
Wait, 5 cans for €4? That seems.
4 cans
seems
for
cheap.
€5. It's a 3.5% ABV. Like, it's gross. That was like a big thing. And then the other was like naggins, what we call a naggin of like vodka, which is like what do they call it again? A fifth and then it's a handle. No, there's a fifth, and then a something, and then a handle. Well, like a naggin of vodka is like 250 mils of vodka. You used to like mix that with like a 2-liter bottle of like, I don't know, Lilt, which is like a soda. That's like the drink of the field drinking exploits. There was a lot of like drinking before going to like underage discos and stuff as well.
Tell me, Jay, if you don't want to answer this, but what's the sort of like your parenting drinking story with your daughters? Like, are you allowing them to drink in your presence? Are you like, what's your vibe on that?
Oh, yeah, literally. I mean, I have dinner parties now at my apartment where the kids come over and on Wednesdays. And my oldest is, 20, going to be 21. And so wine is available. But, often, as I'm pouring myself, a second and third glass, the kids are like, oh, no, I have work tomorrow. I have class. I have college tomorrow. And
oh my
then
God,
the
college
other is, literally, I'm, studying for my AP test, or I have an AP test in a week and a half. So
and are you
I
just
can't have a
like,
glass
are
of
you
wine
just like,
with you.
yeah, look at me. I've raised these kids so well. They're prioritizing correctly.
Yeah, I love that. And that's why I won't let them ever listen to this podcast where I talk about underage drinking.
That's amazing.
That's
your kids are a little younger,
culture, I think.
So I presume they're already
Our
drinking
kids are young.
Whiskey,
Really
Irish
young.
whiskey.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's hard to know. It probably depends a little bit on where we are, like physically living, if we're back in Ireland or not. But I can't see myself being too worried if we're having dinner and one of my kids wants to have a beer or a glass of wine. I'm never going to be the cool mom. It was never in my blood. So I wouldn't be saying, get your friends over for a party. Obviously, it goes without saying, I hope that I would never be engaged in any of the other, that I would never be engaged in anything that was going on in this case. But yeah, like I don't know. I feel a little bit, there's like and I know there's the Irish stereotype of like, they're all alcoholics. And then there's the French, or the view of the French where apparently they have like wine and like small glasses from a very young age at like dinner, and like it's just not a big deal. And to me, it's just not that big of a deal. It's kind of like everything in moderation. And I think the more you taboo something, the more it becomes a deal.
Sure.
And so that would probably be my approach. I don't know what your approach has been, Jeff, as you've raised teenagers.
I mean, we have alcohol in our home. We don't. It's. I feel like we've got kids, one of whom his body is a temple, and he may never drink, which was how my father was, right? Like his whole life, he never drank alcohol, never smoked a cigarette, never, like, that was his way, and that's fine. My wife and I both drink alcohol and have a variety of types of alcohol readily available. But I think our kids are the type to not, I don't know, every kid is different. Like, I feel like there's so much sort of things here of like, it's not just about how you are as a parent, but it's what your kids are and how your kids kind of think of you and see you. And my two kids are very different from each other. And I feel like, I can try to be as sort of open and accepting and tolerant as I think I am, but that's maybe not how my kid sees me.
Definitely
that just
not.
sort of is what it is. Like, I'm not going to host a kegger. Like, that's not
Kegger.
that's not happening.
That felt very American. A kegger.
But also, like, I don't know. As judgy as I am, that's my nature. I am trying real hard to be like just accepting and at peace. I can't judge you. Like, whatever. Like, have a good time, man.
Yeah.
Just have it safely.
And I think in a lot of instances, that's maybe what people are trying to do, like have it safely, not forcing 14-year-olds into sexual acts and recording them while also like shoving alcohol down their neck.
But you're right. Like, I think if you can experiment with that, if you can experiment in like a relatively safe way, then you're less likely to go wild and do something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I think.
I agree. And also, it's kind of the opening the doors to the communication, which I think is a huge thing. At least my kids are very young. But for me as a parent, I'm like, I want my kids to always know, like, and I try and say to them as much as I can, nothing you can do can make me not love you. Like, you can make really bad mistakes. I'm here to help you through them. Like, that is my job. Like, my job is to help you navigate through that. So I think there's an element of, you know, again, yes, the taboo, but also if you create an element of, well, we are holier than thou, you're not going to create the back and forth, that open communication that you need in order to see if there's a dead body by the pool. Or, sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Well,
that was a bit too
no,
harsh.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, Jeff, the point that you brought up a little while ago when you were saying about how you respected your son's views, or towards where he's very healthy, and giving a kid that space and not suggesting something to them and letting them be who they are, I think that's the right call. That's what I think we've been talking about, is like what we should be doing. And I think that's why we're so horrified by these cases where these people in the positions of power were kind of pushing their kids into doing these things instead of just like letting them, like, what if they were like what if they just wanted to read or watch TV, or do something, but instead they're being forced down this path. And like Dee, like you were saying before, like, why she should have just gone out with her mates, like why wasn't she just partying?
Yeah. If you want to
and
party,
leave
go
the
party.
kids out of it.
Like, yeah, exactly.
But that's the
Mm-hmm.
takeaway from so many of these stories about these sort of like predatory relationships, whether it's teachers or just any type of adult and like a teenager or a kid, is like, you have just fucked up that kid's life. You have set them on a path. You have affected how they're going to be in relationships, how, like, what type of therapy they're going to need, what, like, you have made this choice for them.
I do often think, though, when we dive into these cases, there is, and I do not mean this, I am not sitting on the fence with this, and I'm absolutely not coming down to defend anyone in this case, but I will also say that in a lot of cases where we've seen this type of behavior before, Jeff, at least in the cases we've covered, not all, but in a lot, there has been sexual abuse on the predator. Like, they have experienced sexual abuse themselves often. It is not a reason to continue that vicious cycle, but it is something that I think we need to say. And so, yes,
Sure.
like, I would say, like, why wouldn't you just go out with your own mates? Like, if this is what you're into, like, go and do your own thing elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I think that's another element that we have to consider. We also have to remind ourselves that these are like fully fledged adults who know right from wrong. And it's not even just the power, but it's the trust. Like, I am trusting in a grown up to know that this is the right thing. And me as a 14-year-old boy who just wants to get laid, like, doesn't give a shit, isn't thinking of the like ramifications to his mind and his body and his life from going ahead and doing this. Like, very, very different.
So to your like hurt people sentiment, which is definitely true.
Did you just say what I said, but using less words? That's never happened before.
Sure did. Hurt people. In this case, the Shannon O'Connor, the Los Gatos Party Mom case, what I thought was interesting was I Googled this several different ways to try to get more of the backstory. And all I could find was versions of the same kind of like truncated story. I couldn't find anything about her beyond like what happened post arrest, like the trial, like the case itself. Like, to Dee's point, maybe that's out there somewhere and I just couldn't find it, but I don't know anything about her prior to 2020.
Yeah. But you won't. Like, the book will come out after the sentencing.
Maybe, but I mean, this case is from 6 years ago. Like, that could have come
Yeah,
out
but
by
they
now.
can't. Well, you can't really have the book out when the case
Because the
is still
trial is
pending.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, the book is probably half
Mhm,
written. It's
mhm.
ready to go to publish, or the podcast. Like, it's ready to go. You joking? Like, blonde young mom in Los Gatos in California. Like, of course, it's 100% there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. But
Yep.
yeah, I think it's a good point. I think it's a good point to bring up. Jay, I want to say thank you both for joining, for coming back, for
Oh yeah.
doing all your research, for bringing us this local story to talk about. You are always welcome back on the pod.
Oh, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Dee. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, to bring my wealth of Florida knowledge, to a nationally broadcast podcast.
Before we go, again, Jay, thank you both as a guest on the show, but also as a supporter of the show. As a reminder, if anyone else out there wants to support the show, wants to be a guest on the show, wants to contribute ideas to the show, best way to do that is go to patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time. You can join, you can get news about the show, you can get outtakes, extra clips from the show, and you can reach out to us, talk to us, let us know what we should cover. And like Jay, come on. And we've several of our guests have been, actually most of our guests actually have been Patreon supporters. So that is always welcome. And also, if you're not ready for that, although you should be, you can do it for free, honestly. But don't forget to leave a comment. Let us know what you think, whether it's about this story, about any of the stories we covered. If you have feedback for us, leave a comment on Spotify, on Apple, leave us a rating. And also be sure to tell a friend. Keep spreading the word. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jay, for joining again. I appreciate you not bringing any rascal behavior to the show and trying to trick me.
Of course, no.
This whole thing has been a ploy.
It's all a lie.
Not this time.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.